The winter wind cut across the plains like a blade, whipping snow into drifts that swallowed the fences and the dry, brittle remnants of last season's crops. The sun had long since dipped behind jagged cliffs, leaving a pale grey twilight that seemed to stretch forever, touching the lonely homestead of Jeremiah Callahan, a widowed rancher who had lived in near silence since the death of his wife 3 years past. His cabin, weathered and sturdy, sat on a ridge overlooking the valley below, a place of isolation he had chosen after the cruel hand of fate had taken from him the warmth of companionship he once thought permanent. Fires crackled faintly inside, their orange glow dancing across the wooden walls, casting shadows of memories on the floorboards that creaked under the weight of old age and sorrow. It was on such a night, as Jeremiah sat by the hearth tending the last logs of pine for warmth, that he first saw her emerging from the storm like a spirit born of the land itself. Her figure was slight against the vast, white landscape, but there was a strength in her stance, a confidence that defied the bitter cold. She walked with the careful, deliberate steps of someone who had faced hardship and survived, her cloak heavy with snow, her eyes scanning the cabin with a mixture of hope and determination. Jeremiah, who had almost convinced himself that the world outside had become a place of only hardship and silence, felt a stir of something he had long buried: curiosity, unease, and perhaps the faintest whisper of hope. The woman lifted a hand in greeting, her voice cutting through the wind with startling clarity. "I need a shelter," she said, and in that simple plea, Jeremiah felt the weight of the universe pressing upon him. For in her eyes he saw a story that had the power to unravel the years of solitude he had wrapped himself in. The snow continued to fall, relentless and thick, yet she moved forward with unwavering resolve, and Jeremiah, gripping the edge of the table as if to brace himself against the unknown, found himself compelled to step outside, his boots crunching against the frozen ground, to meet this mysterious visitor whose arrival would change everything he had believed about the world, about survival, and about the fragile threads of human connection that persisted even in the harshest winters. Inside the cabin, warmth began to seep into the corners as the fire fought against the cold that seeped in through the cracks in the wooden walls. The woman's presence was commanding yet gentle. She carried herself with the dignity of her people, the Apache, whose lives had been forged through centuries of struggle, courage, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. She removed her cloak with careful hands, revealing a dress worn from travel but mended repeatedly with care and skill, the seams telling stories of past battles fought with the elements, with hunger, with danger that stalked the open plains. Jeremiah watched silently, fascinated and cautious, aware that the stories etched on her face were ones he would not pry into, yet he could feel them pressing upon him as if the very air between them carried the weight of unsaid words. She spoke again, her voice now softer, almost vulnerable. "I've nowhere else to go. The storm will take me if I stay out there." Jeremiah, feeling the old familiar ache in his chest that had once been reserved for love and loss, realized that he had a choice: to shut the door against the unknown, or to open it wide and risk letting someone into a life that had become dangerously predictable. The fire crackled as if echoing the uncertainty that filled the room, and outside the wind howled against the cabin like a living beast, relentless, untamed, yet powerless against the sturdy walls and the fragile bond that was beginning to form between the widowed man and the lone Apache woman seeking shelter. He handed her a seat by the hearth and offered a bowl of steaming stew, a gesture of humanity that was simple yet profound, and as she accepted, a silence fell that was neither awkward nor empty, but filled with the weight of beginnings, of trust slowly being extended across the chasm of loneliness and the wild, untamed landscape that lay beyond the cabin's door. The night deepened, and with it came stories told in glances, in measured movements, in the way the firelight caught in her eye, stories of survival, resilience, and the quiet, burning determination to endure, to live, and to claim even a moment of warmth in a world that often seemed too cruel for such luxuries. Days passed, each blending into the other as the snowstorm raged outside, isolating the cabin from the rest of the world, and with each passing hour, Jeremiah and the Apache woman, whose name was I, began to bridge the gap that separated them between cultures, histories, and hearts that had known sorrow and loss. Jeremiah, a man who had long believed himself incapable of trust or affection, found in Ayanna a reflection of courage and resilience that stirred memories of his late wife, while also challenging him to imagine a life beyond mourning. They worked together to maintain the homestead, clearing snow, tending to livestock, repairing fences broken by the relentless winter, each action carrying with it a silent understanding, a rhythm of cooperation born of necessity yet evolving into something deeper. Ayanna shared tales of her people, of the Apache traditions and ways that had been passed down through generations, her stories painting the cold, barren cabin with colors of rich culture and profound wisdom. Jeremiah listened, captivated not only by the words but by the cadence, the way her voice seemed to weave magic into the mundane tasks of survival. Outside, the storm showed no mercy, yet inside the cabin, a warmth grew that had nothing to do with the fire and unspoken connection, a fragile hope that perhaps life could still offer moments of joy and companionship even after years of solitude and sorrow. Nights were long and quiet, filled with the soft sounds of the wind and the crackle of firewood. Yet they were also filled with conversations, laughter that returned to Jeremiah's life like a long-lost visitor, and the tentative glances that spoke more than words ever could. In the struggle for survival against nature's unforgiving grasp, a deeper struggle unfolded, the struggle of hearts learning to open again, of old wounds healing under the careful attention of patience, understanding, and the simple, enduring act of being present for one another. By the time Christmas arrived, the snow had thickened into a pristine blanket that made the world outside appear both magical and treacherous, and Jeremiah realized that the presence of Ayanna had transformed the cabin, the ranch, and himself in ways he had never imagined possible. What began as a simple act of sheltering a stranger had evolved into a partnership, a blending of lives shaped by hardship but softened by compassion and shared experience. They decorated a modest tree with what little they could find, a ritual that seemed absurd in the harsh wilderness yet felt profoundly significant, a symbol of renewal and resilience in a world that often demanded only survival. When night fell and the stars pierced the darkness with cold brilliance, Jeremiah and Ayanna stood outside, surveying the land that had brought them together, the wind biting at their faces, yet powerless against the warmth that had grown between them. In that moment, words became unnecessary, for the silence itself was a testament to the bond they had forged, to the courage required to open hearts in a world that often tested the limits of endurance and trust. And as the first snowflakes of Christmas gently kissed the earth, Jeremiah understood that life's harshest winters could give rise to unexpected warmth, that the arrival of a stranger on a cold, lonely night could reshape destinies, and that even in the wild, untamed frontier, love, compassion, and the simple act of sheltering another soul could create a story, worthy of being remembered long after the snow had melted and the winds had ceased. Ayana's presence was no longer a temporary respite from the storm. She had become a part of the land, a part of Jeremiah's life, a living testament to the truth that even in isolation, even after loss, the human heart has an extraordinary capacity to heal, to hope, and to embrace the wild, beautiful unpredictability of life itself.